awesome. Excitement, Dyer.
Okay, we are live. Big day today, Don. We had the announcement. We called it. We called it Phantom Theater. So I'm over the moon excited about it. Sorry, there was supposed to be audio for that video that played, but nothing can ever go right, of course. So so it just played in the silence. But I was able to pipe in the Phantom Theater music ultimately.
Let's first about us getting it right. Let's come clear. There was nobody that works at Kings Island that tipped us off that this was coming. So that's not where any of the information was coming from. But it was fun to talk about what was coming, and then to wake up today and see it was pretty much exactly what we had talked about, that it would be the return of Maestro, and it would not be the same Phantom Theater that everyone had ridden before, that it would be a totally new experience. And I'm pretty excited about that. I actually think, Ryan, based on the description and what I'm seeing with the different renderings and that this will be even better than the original.
I'm hoping. I really am. I'm very optimistic about what we have going on, and I think it's going to be really neat, and it's going to be something that they can be really proud of. I wasn't a big fan of the boo blasting aspect. I was like, if they bring it back, I hope it's not a shooter.
No, that's my least favorite of everything that's been in that building was boo blasters. But I think this one has a chance to, to be better than what Phantom Theater, was during the years that it ran there.
Yeah. So I want to hear your comments. Everybody here, there's a bunch of people here. Shout out to Elizabeth, who's hiding in the back under a burner account. But, what do you think of Phantom Theater opening Nightmare? First of all, the name, that's interesting. I didn't see that one coming. That was not on the bingo card.
No, it wasn't. You and I were tossing some names around last night that we thought it could be. We were close, but we did not hit on that one.
Yeah. Beyond the Airtime said, are they going to use the older ride system or would they upgrade it? I'm not sure what shape it's in.
I don't know. It looks like the vehicles that you're in, they're kind of like designed or themed to like theater boxes, so it looks a little bit different. So maybe they'll be getting some new vehicles there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think the ones that are in the concept art are kind of like they look a lot like the kind of doom buggy style that they've had for the past 20 something years, 30 something years. So I think we'll still have the same ones. The question is, are they going to reorient them again? Because they reoriented the Phantom Theater ones. Remember, they removed every other car, and then they turned them in different directions. And I think the reason why they turned them was so you could be closer to the targets.
Right.
So
yeah, they'll do some work with that, though. I mean, it may be the same vehicles, but it'll look and feel different.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's going to be the same ride system. I think it's all going to look very familiar, just with new aspects and so on. I don't know how much it takes to actually make it so the cars turn a different way. Like, I don't know if that's a big deal or not. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
26 different scenes in there. So that's a lot.
Brian Starowski, I hope I said that right, said animatronics or will be projections and cutouts? That's the question, sir.
Looked like we could see a little bit of all three.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can deal with projections. I can deal with screens. Obviously, the practical I do like. The cutouts, though, man, like, just don't do it. It's only Tony said, bring back the OG Enchanted Voyage. Yeah.
I missed that ride. It was good. Had its time.
Tim Henry of Music Life said, quite Franklin. I think he meant quite frankly, the only good thing about Phantom Theater was just the lobby and the organs. After you got in the pods, it was kind of meh. Well, I would agree that the Maestro was the best part at the very beginning, but I don't agree that the rest of the ride was weak.
No,
thought
I
that
thought
was
it was a
cool.
fantastic ride. I really did. I thought it was up there. You know, it wasn't as good as Haunted Mansion at
Mhm.
Magic Kingdom or Disneyland, but I thought, you know, once you got past those two, you know, it was on par what you know what other dark rides were out there in the industry at the time.
Yeah. Darth Rimbrod said, "Here's a big question: Is R&R Creative involved at all? Loved Rick's book and remember him saying there and at the Q&A about his interest in seeing the ride come back. His involvement could mean a lot. I think if he was involved, they would have said so.
Yeah, the only you know name mentioned was Sally Dark Rides. You know, with this coming from the park.
Yeah, and I believe Sally technically manufactured the original Phantom Theater. I think R&R just designed it. I
Yeah,
don't
they
think he
designed
has.
it and came up with the story and everything for it. But yeah, we only saw. I mean, they may be, but you know, there was no mention of them in the release that the park sent out.
Yeah. We need a No Legs Larry animatronic. Well, it wouldn't be the first one, would it? You know, that was you know, let me pull up on YouTube a ride through, and you can see all these characters because the hardly any of the characters from Phantom Theater Encore were original to the show. You know,
I think that what Kings Island has here is a great opportunity with several of these different characters for merchandise opportunities.
yep, yep, I agree. Let's see here. I'm trying to get a copy of it. Let's see here. Let's see here. Theme Park Art by Allen said the press release used the phrase fast paced. In what sense is this true? The current ride system's not very fast. I think they mean the story will be fast
The
paced.
story, yes, I don't. Yeah, I don't think you're going to go any faster through the attraction. It's just going to be the story's going to come at you fast.
I wonder if they'll add a splashdown or something. That'd be cool. All right. So sorry about that. Pulling you off the screen, Alan. And sorry. Okay. So there's the original Maestro. That's the one. I mean, see, look how long his hair was. It's way more puffy in like the AI generated one that they did for this one. And then this is actually a pretty good view. You know, those faces were removed and put into Phantom Theater Encore. I think the ones on the left when you enter the ride are still there, but these were taken out. And I want to say they're still in the Kings Island Theater at this point. Big Blue Amusement Productions said they should turn that little indoor theater there next to Great Pumpkin Coaster into a Phantom Theater meet and greet next year. I think that's a good idea.
That would be a lot of fun to do that, or even just to store, you know, a merchandise place too, just to have Phantom Theater merchandise in there.
It'd be cool if they could reroute it through there. So you exit to the gift shop. Yeah. So the other question that I have, and Don and you and I discussed this, I don't know if it was on a show or not, but do they bring back Phantom Theater Encore? Like, do they synergize that? Because I feel like they almost kind of have to.
That would be a good thing to do. And when you look at what the options are, you know, you have that, you know, I could see them bringing back Gazillion Bubbles again, or they could do a magic show. So I think we'll see one of those three things.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the three. Tyson Weems said, if it's new cars, do you think it will take up more of the building than Boo Blasters did?
No, I think it'll take up the same amount of space that Boo Blasters did.
Yeah, I think it'll follow the same track. You know, here's the first ever flashlight in Boo Blasters, that guy there. Or not Boo Blasters, Phantom Theater. Sorry, I'm still stuck in the past at this point. Caught in the ropes.
Yep, caught in the ropes from the show, right?
Yeah. This was a really good animatronic. I thought that this was nice. I wonder how many of this is at the Great Bosco. I wonder how many of these will return. Like I imagine pretty much all the characters will return, but I wonder if they'll try to recreate any of the scenes or anything like that. Because some of this
Yeah.
stuff is just classic, Oh,
Mhm.
Olga Bavani. Oh, there's No Legs Larry. I told you had an animatronic.
Yeah, he was my favorite character, and I mean, I love Maestro, but I really love No Legs Larry. At that time, he was just known as Usher. Nobody was calling him No Legs Larry back in the 90s.
They imply that the cast of Phantom Theater Encore, like the ghouls and stuff, started calling him No Legs Larry. But I mean, so that's I don't know. I don't know if that was his name or if that's just supposed to be like a given name. You're shooting him out of a cannon and stuff. That was the one thing I thought was anticlimactic with Phantom Theater Encore was that they fired off the cannon and like
Mhm.
it was just like nonsense. They didn't do anything cool with it.
Right.
Marriage is exciting, and it's the financially savvy
So
fiance you are.
let's see here. So there's that's the Maestro again. But a lot of this stuff, I mean, it sucks filming dark rides because it's obviously dark in there, and if you turn on the lights, you don't get the full effect. There's the Mummy. So the Mummy was the one thing that Rick Bastrop actually did the voice for. You'll see it here in a second. He went, "Moo." He was very
Yeah.
proud of it. We had him on the Attraction Screw podcast, and he talked all about the one voice that he got to do.
We'll bring him back on if he's involved with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Zach Berger said, "Do you think it'll be a more intense theme for younger kids than Boo Blasters did?"
I think it'll be elevated a little bit.
I agree. There's the mouse. I think it will. I think inherently it will because Boo Blasters is a little bit more adventurous, while this is a little bit more haunted. I think that the characters will be a little bit more cartoony and stuff. Because the last thing they want to do is scare the kids before they go in. Somebody made mention that they're bringing back the furnace scene. Did you see anything on that? Did whoever said that? Like, was there something in the press release about the furnace scene coming back or anything like that? All right,
That was a good scene.
it was brilliant.
The boiler room scene, yes, that'll be back.
Laura Jo Ross said, "Do we know who has the OG animatronics? I saw the Smurfs on eBay."
I don't know that those were ever made available to anybody. I know when we would do end of season type full-time events and different props from different rides no longer there would be made available, and that there was never any Phantom Theater available. So for the longest time, a lot of those were just in storage in the crypt building.
Yeah. So first of all, they used them for Haunt for years. They used a lot of the characters for Haunt. And then they were not designed to be outdoors. So when they left them out for Haunt for 6 weeks at a time for a couple of years, they melted. Literally
melted. The rain wasn't good for them. Yeah, they just were not in good shape at the end.
And then the first year that they had Madame Fatales, they had the characters, but they were covered in burlap. But it was them, and you haven't seen them since. There's a couple of them, like I think the cannon that was on the stage for Phantom Theater Encore was in the ride. The sarcophagus was in Madame Fatales, but I think that was moved to the theater. But I know somebody sent me a video of the animatronics being carted off to be trashed. So it is my belief that the original ones are thrown away. But at the same time, if you want to take a 30 or 40-year-old animatronic, you're better off just building a new one at this point with how technology's been and stuff. Bessie B2 said, "Is the boiler room from the slaughterhouse?" It is, and it's in terrible shape right now. Xander Novak said, "Love the over the point segments this week. Our visits to CP this week have been awesome with no crowds." That's cool.
Good to hear. I'm possibly going to be there either September 5th or 6th.
Well, that's cool. Ride Siren's Curse for me. I haven't gotten to ride it yet. Amusement Park Portal. So check him out on Facebook. The press release mentioned something about flashlights. So is it going to be another shooter or is this going to be a ride through? If you look at the promotional material, it definitely screams shooter to me.
Mm-hmm. Same here.
You know? So I think you shoot them with flashlights. What I'm hoping for is that they at least replace them all so they work, because they clearly just don't right now. Let's see here. Nameless Thule 13 said, I think the layout will be a little bit longer. I think you guys are a little bit more optimistic than we are. I think it's going to be the exact same layout.
I think they'll use the same track. Yeah, I mean, it would be less expensive to do it that way. And I don't know, when you're talking about, what they're looking to do, if you know the layout of the current track, there's enough there to do the 26 scenes that they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I just don't know, how they would do that without, opening up another room in there off to the side to where they have the kids' theater and that. So I don't know. I think it'll be the same exact layout with the track, and they might shape the rooms a little bit differently on that.
Yeah, what I hope is they bring back the Pepper's Ghost scene. That was the best part of it, and they that's where, like, I think if I recall, it's where, like, the guy that holds, like, the iPod Classic is,
Mhm.
like, I think it's the library scene, because that actually is a very deep, like, room that goes down, and it's got a two-way mirror and so on.
That would be really cool to bring back. There was no mention of that being part of it, but I would imagine that, since it was such a big part of it before, somehow that'll get worked in there. It says a
I
bunch
hope.
of surprises are coming. So, when you're talking about the different things that it includes, it says, instead of and more, and it just says and some surprises.
It also talks about Easter eggs, so I wonder what would be in there that would be Easter eggs. All right.
Easter eggs are fun.
Bubba Love said, not going to make it to KI this weekend, but will ride Boo Blasters at Canada's Wonderland tomorrow or Saturday.
I hear that's a good one. I've not been on that one. I've been on the ones at King's Dominion and Carowinds, and they're all a little bit different.
Yeah.
The buildings look different. The layouts are a little bit different. So that's been a question too that I've got is, does this mean that we're going to see something different at Carowinds and King's Dominion? And it doesn't seem like that'll happen in the next year or so, but they're about to too.
Don, let me ask you this. So the other Boo Blasters, well, Canada included, and then Carowinds and King's Dominion, they didn't have Phantom Theater. So what did they go directly from Smurfs Enchanted Voyage to Scooby-Doo?
Those, yeah, they had, I think they had Scooby-Doo at those parks. None of them had like the Enchanted Voyage like Kings Island had. It wasn't, that was kind of after their time when they started to do other indoor type things at those parks.
Yeah.
I do remember Scooby-Doo being at those parks.
Stephen Hornick said, can you also touch on any of the crypt teaser that was at the end of the first video? What could it mean?
I think to me that was just a diversion.
Yeah.
Something that Tony Clark at Cedar Point was known for diversions in the teasers and that he would do for new attractions. So that to me just came across that way.
Yeah. Even I saw online, I saw countless videos of, like, is Kings Island getting 2 new attractions for 2026? But we were talking about how The Conjuring was going in there, but I think that's public knowledge by the time we, hit it up and stuff. I think it's nonsense.
Yeah, I think everybody has to get used to The Conjuring, or some kind of haunted attraction is going to be in that building, because that's kind of at a premium, trying to find places to put indoor mazes. That building has worked for that. I know everybody says, well, it's only open, 6 weeks out of the year. I don't think too many people pay attention to that building being there, when you're walking around in the summer months. The enthusiasts and, the ones that are there 4 or 5 days a week, they pick out every little thing. But for the most part, 90% of the guests, it just blends into the woodwork there. I mean, they don't even notice the building's vacant or anything.
My big ask is that if they, they're doing The Conjuring in there, I hope they use the height of the building to their advantage. I hope it's not just a maze that could really go anywhere that's in a 5-story building.
Yeah, that would be a waste. But I do, from what I hear, that they feel really good about the way The Conjuring is going to work in that building.
Yeah, and it's going to be a different experience. I heard people compared to an escape room. They have not said that. But that was my thought too when they talked about how, you got to get your way out, you're working in small groups and stuff like that. So I wonder if it will have like escape room elements to it. But I'm particularly excited for it. I'll have to
I think
rewatch
that's
that.
going to really elevate the haunt experience, is having that attraction there. And sure, it's an upcharge, but I think it'll be worth it.
Yeah. It's and I got to catch up on those Conjuring movies. At least watch the first one. I had to watch the Fallout series. I had to watch the Terrifier series, and I had to watch Five Nights at Freddy's to get ready for Horror Nights this weekend. But I'm gonna give myself a little bit of a break and then start watching.
Yeah, I'm
the
going to have to watch
Conjuring
The
stuff.
Conjuring too, because I've not seen any of those.
All right. Ben H said, so with being year 3 of the family type rides, do you think 2027 could be the next big coaster year?
No, I don't think that means anything. I think you put in what you think is going to move the needle in the family attractions. Anytime they've done something in, Planet Snoopy or out in the water park, those are the years that it moves the needles the most in terms of, both paid tickets and season passes and that. So I think they'll stay the family course. I don't know that you'll get anything in 2027. You may not. Money's going to be really tight. They've already committed some other projects in that. So you may have to sit tight for a little bit.
Yeah. I don't Kings Island has never actually, the Legacy Cedar Fair, to my knowledge, and I'm sure there's exceptions in there, but they've never announced a ride or attraction and then been like, just kidding, it's coming the following year or whatever.
Right.
But Six Flags used to do that quite a bit, and now the new Six Flags is doing that. But I think the investment in Kings Island, I think they're gonna like hit a point where if they get people in there that don't understand the business, they're gonna be like, well, it's the most saturated park, so we don't need to invest in it. And then
that's a concern, because they have come out and said that it's the most saturated park, so they don't really feel like they have to do too much there. But the one thing I would advise Kings Island fans is, you see the vortex spot open and all that, and don't keep trying to look down the road what they might do, in 2027, 28, 29, whenever. Enjoy what's in front of you right now, because if you don't enjoy the now, you miss what's happening now. So, those other years are going to get here, but I would just, focus on what's right in front of you right now.
So what you're trying to say is life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around, you might miss something.
Exactly, Ryan. And tell us, that's a reference to what?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Right.
But you mentioned Breakfast Club.
I did.
But it's John Hughes, no less. He wrote both of those. David Bellamy Wise says, as long as Phantom Theater has the same soundtrack, I'll be okay.
I even think there's going to be some similarities, but there'll be some differences too. I mean, I really think this is going to be, a totally different type of a ride. If you're thinking it's going to be the same Phantom Theater, it won't be. And I keep, everyone that's asked me, I keep saying, I believe, because of the technology and the things that you can do, that weren't available back in 1992, this one's going to be better.
Yeah. Fish Dinner said, what do you think is going to happen in the Invertigo plot?
Invertigo?
Yeah. Invertigo seems like it's being worked on. Like it's got those tracer cables and stuff, which to me says that they're doing things to traverse the lift hills. So I think that whatever is wrong with it, they are working on, or at least tend to, because they would just not touch it. They wouldn't start removing chains and stuff like that if they were going to tear the ride down. They would do nothing with it now and then tear the thing down.
No, they'd wait till like January, February to do any kind of demo work on it. So yeah, it does look like they're trying to get it going. There's there's been several rides this year that's it. It's at the end of the line. I mean, Congo Falls, how many times do we hear, well, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to work again. But then the Kings Island maintenance team finds a way, with very little money to work with, to keep it running. So I don't know. I don't think that the park wants to get rid of any of the roller coasters. I really think that they'll do everything they can to keep them. If they can fix what was wrong with Invertigo, they're going to do it.
Yeah. Amusement Park
Monster had
Portal.
been written off. I think that'll be back.
Amusement Park Portal said, "I've been hearing Congo Falls is going away for the past 15 years." Yep.
Yep, and that person that said it in 2009 that this is it, final year, they'll be the first to tell you that I told you.
They did though. Like when did that ride come in? Like 86, 80, whenever.
Came in 88.
So, okay. So if I told you in 1988, this ride's going to be removed in the future, like that's technically correct, even if
Yeah,
it is
you'd be
40
correct.
years off. All right. Gannon K said, "Do you think there will be a change to the entrance to the building, or will it still be the castle?" He's talking about Boo Blasters.
I think it'll still be a castle, but they'll clean it up just like they did every time they changed from, whether it was Phantom Theater to Scooby Doo to Boo Blasters. I think that they will certainly, dress it up a little bit. It'll look similar, but there'll be enough differences.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully it won't be exactly the same because we've had the same facade for the past 2 iterations. The old one was very simple. I mean, it literally looked like a plain theater entrance,
Yep.
but it also kind of looked like a haunted house too. So that was really cool. But yeah, I don't know. I was wondering about that myself.
They plan to start working on it right away, so the ride will give its last rides on Labor Day. And then a couple days after, they're going to start work right away.
Yeah, they've got to bring out like one of those recycling dumpsters and put all the cardboard cutouts that they have into them for recycling. Actually, it'd be kind of cool to buy one of those. Like if they had, like the full timer auction may have them or may not, but it'll be, I'm ragging on Boo Blasters, but it would be kind of fun to own one of the props from it. I mean, so many people had, they had Smurf stuff, especially. Stephen Hornack said, "What do you think changing the park entrance could do for the park? I know it's not a whole lot, just an entrance, but it could bring a better vibe to the park."
The front gate entrance he's talking about?
He's talking about the IR, I think.
I don't know where you'd bring them in. Where else is better than that?
I think he means like if they tore down the IR and built something else.
That's not going to happen. There's a lot of things connected to that area. You've got gift shops, you've got restrooms, you've got conference room. I mean, it's not going to. They might change the facade, how it looks out front, but they're not tearing that down.
Yeah, and okay, I think that they're planning on doing that because if they weren't, you better believe that they would replace that canvas thing with a screen like they did at Cedar Point. Because screens make a lot more money than static stuff does. So Not only could they put like, the haunt thing up there, but they can put your Snickers thing up there too. And then heck, they can throw up an ad for Progressive. It's just like those dynamic ads, like the screens that are along the highway. Those are technically illegal in Ohio, but they pay a fine every month for having them up. But it's worth so much more money to have it like that than it is a static that they just pay the fine.
Yeah, but I do think like the entrance out as you're walking toward that, I think that will get an upgrade, a different look in the foreseeable future. But in terms of just totally, tearing that all down and rebuilding that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Let's see here. Laura Jo Ross said, "Are they going to put the old Phantom Theater cars back on the ride?" I doubt it.
No.
No, the cars that are on the ride now were the Phantom Theater cars. They took off half of them and they were in a boneyard. But I don't think that those cars that were sitting out in a boneyard probably being harvested for parts, for the past 30 years or so. Are probably very valuable. I think if anything, they'll get brand new ones, but I think you're going to get the ones that you have now, probably repainted and maybe reskinned a little bit, but it's going to be the same vehicles. Let's see here. Fish Dinner said, "Do you think that in the near future there will be a ride in the Crypt building? If so, what?"
I do not. I think it will continue to be used for a haunt attraction. Like we said earlier, is those spaces are, limited for those indoor mazes, so they need that. So I don't think so. I think as long as it works, especially if The Conjuring does well, they're not going to put a ride in there. They need those spaces for the haunt mazes, and that's a great spot for one.
Yeah. So Greg Gableman, actually, I wanted to give him a shout out because he became a YouTube member on this video before we ever went live. So I appreciate you.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah. The Coolest Kids Club. All right. Now back down. Eric Grouse said, what do you think was the bigger headline news, Wawa or Phantom Theater?
I'm going to give it to Phantom Theater. I think I saw more of that today on social media than I did that. There was some news stations that did a few stories and that on it, but I still think Phantom Theater even did better on the news stations too.
Yeah.
And their social channels in terms of engagement. So yeah, I think Phantom Theater got the edge.
And Wawa already opened in like Westchester, I think. So it's not the first one in the area. Brian Sterowski said it's a budget thing. I'm sure they'd love to have those screens at the park entrances, but it's probably just not a priority.
I agree with that. That if it was in the budget, they certainly would have it. I know that there would be a lot of advantages to have it, but sometimes you got to put your money elsewhere.
Yeah, and you know what though? The thing though about this, having been in the screen business myself, shall we say, when you can monetize something, it makes it a lot easier to do. So I think that if they could show their accountancy that like, hey, we're going to be able to make money off this if you amortize it over 5 years or whatever, that's when we're going to be able to that's when we're going to be able to to do things like that. Let's see here.
Question for Brian there. Any ghost sightings lately?
Sorry. Let me do something real quick. Zach Berger, do you think that within the next 10 or 15 years, Kings Island could build an on-site hotel where the baseball fields used to be near the employee entrance?
Yes, I do think they could build an on-site hotel. I think that was something that was in the plans, something they wanted to do at some point. That was with Richard Zimmerman as the CEO. So who knows, plans could change there. I don't know that it would go there. You could put it in that spot for sure. But I'm not so sure that, maybe the Timberwolf area would be a nice place for a hotel too.
Not if they're having concerts there, though. I mean, come on. I'm just kidding. Yeah, they'll never have concerts.
I think that would be the better spot for it, because imagine the view you would have too from your hotel room if you're like on the 5th floor or something, looking out at the park from there.
It'd be like Grand Helios. You're inside the park. Give me just a second here. Let me catch up with the rest of the class. Little Mac, I guess Noah, the field reporter's in the room. He'll join us later. Potter said, how strong is the rumor of Peanuts going away and being replaced by Looney Tunes?
It's a possibility because the contract will expire.
Mm-hmm.
And that ends on December 31st. The last time it got extended was in mid-September, and it was extended by 5 years. Will they do another 5 years? I don't know. I've had people tell me that would, they just redid Peanuts, and some, they added a couple of, Camp Snoopy in that, and some of the other parks added a couple of new things to their, kids area. It's less expensive to just swap out the right ID sign and put a new name up than it would be to renew that contract. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that that's what they do when you look at where Six Flags is, financially. Do they have the money to renew that contract? They may want to, but they may not have the money to do it. Is that the right thing to do if you don't have the money? Because if you do that, then something else is going to get cut. So there's a lot of question marks there. So yeah, I think that the rumblings that could happen, I think there's a good possibility.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like you and I kind of discussed offline last night that like, okay, they're going to announce Phantom Theater, but are they also going to announce Looney Tunes? And I think you were the one saying like they'll probably wait till after the first of the year to announce Looney Tunes, which I think that would be a pretty decent strategy, because it's not like it would be confusing. Like, this is a Looney Tunes ride, and then in January they announce, oh, by the way, the whole area is going to be Looney Tunes. I think that being able to do it then and get Kings Island in front of people would be a really good route to go. Because you're getting press in a time when Kings Island's closed and so on. All right. Ronald Field says, "Hey, Tower Topics. I'm from Kentucky, but have went to Kings Island since I was probably 5 for about 40 years. I'd love to see something bring back evolve with Son of Beast. It was so iconic."
Problem with Son of Beast was it didn't work. So as much as everybody wants it to come back, it didn't work. It was just problematic from the start. A lot of design flaws. It just, is something that if you were to bring that ride back, you'd have the same exact kind of things probably going on with it. There was things with it. There's a reason why wooden roller coasters did not go down 200 and something feet and then right back up and then make a sharp turn like that one did. I mean, that's just too much force and everything on a wood structure. So it was the design of it. It was a steel coaster design made out of wood, and that's why it didn't work. So, everybody that has all these, I hope they do a reboot of Son of Beast and all that. That's not going to happen.
Okay. Amusement Park Portal said, "I didn't realize till a few years ago that both Kings Island and Kings Dominion have a cemetery in their parking lot."
Yes, they do.
That's a design decision.
Yeah, I think that might be why they got the land a little bit cheaper at both places. Nobody wants to build on an area where there's a cemetery.
Do you remember when they were doing the 50th anniversary articles about, the history of Kings Island? And they had that really detailed article about how they knew that there was a cemetery, but they didn't know where it was, and they had to drudge to find the graves, and they found one, and then they had to find the others, and it was this big process. And I remember, like, it sparked in my head when that came out, and I was like, that's not true. And I found the post because somebody from KIC had posted aerial photos of the land from like 1970, and you can clearly see where like everything, everything was like perfectly plowed and stuff, and there was this triangle where they had the cemetery and the fence was still there and everything. So if it was overgrown, it was because, I mean, maybe the farmers had, like, they bought the land, the farmers left. It was a couple years before they got to that area of Kings Island, but there was no question as to where the cemetery was.
No, not at all. And they knew that was there.
It's only Tony said, "Bring back Hanna-Barbera."
Yeah, I mean, those were popular characters back in the day. And I think, too, sometimes, everybody says kids don't know who, Snoopy is. Kids don't know who this is, or whatever you do. So, somebody's going to say kids don't know who the Hanna-Barbera characters are. I think you can put any kind of a, generic animal or whatever and have that out in the park, and kids are going to migrate to it. So that's overblown. So, yeah, I'd love to see Hanna-Barbera come back.
I mean, it would be nice. It's technically under the same umbrella, but I don't think that the license for Hanna-Barbera is going to equate to the license for Looney Tunes that they have, although they are under the same umbrella.
Looney Tunes is integrated well in the Legacy Six Flags park. So I think it would look okay if they had to go that route.
I think so.
They still have time. There's still, 5 months or whatever on the contract, so there's still time.
Got a super chat from saying, "Diamondback is obviously an iconic coaster name, but was the name Moccasin ever considered based on the Rivertown and water theme?"
No. The only name that really got talked about was Diamondback, and how that happened was the general manager let everybody know we were building a new coaster. It was going to be the tallest, fastest at Kings Island, and oh, by the way, it's going to need a name. So this was the marketing team and some, other directors and that. And he said, if you have any suggestions, just send them my way. So a couple hours later, I emailed him and said, what about Diamondback? And I explained my reasons why. He liked that. He sent it up the flagpole to planning and design. Cedar Fair, Rob Decker. And a couple hours later, came back and he said they like that. He said, looks like that could be the name. And no other names really got tossed around. The only thing that came up at any point in time was if we ran into any roadblocks with any type of trademarks or anything, because there were sports teams in that with the name Diamondback or Diamondbacks. And if we ran into that, what could be a backup name? And the only one that, came up was it could use the same exact logo, but be called Striker.
Mm-hmm.
But Diamondback was, the only name in the room, really, from the time that conversation took place, it's going to need a name, leading up to the announcement.
Yeah. Amusement Park Portal said, didn't they use to paint the beast a cedar color? I seem to remember it being a reddish color years ago.
It was a reddish color, yes. It was stained that color.
It's got to be massive for a roller coaster to go from one color. I mean, like, granted, like, the racer gets painted or whatever, but I've seen times when, like, I mean, the beast it was like a stain color,
mm-hmm.
But now it's just
it was that stain, like that reddish maroon color.
But they just paint it brown now, right? Like, it's not a natural wood color, is it?
No, they just painted that. Yeah, I mean, it looked really, really good when it first opened. Real vibrant.
All right. Pufferfish said, question, the area where Vortex was, is there any rumor that it'll be used for a new ride?
Not anytime soon.
No.
If you're waiting for a ride to go in there, grab a Snickers. It's going to be a while.
Or, as you said earlier, just enjoy what's in front of you. Enjoy Haunt, presented by Snickers.
Yeah, I mean, they just don't have, I mean, the money's not there to do a 30, 40, $50 million ride that people would want to go into that spot. And whatever goes in that spot has to be something that's really special. It just can't be any other ride. It has to be something that, a lot of people are going to be talking about, because it's going to draw comparisons to the Vortex. So you have to wait a little while for that money to be there to do something like that.
Do you think that they realize that, or do you think that with the change in management, it'll be like, oh, we're going to do a $6 million attraction. Oh, there's an open plot. Let's just do it there.
No, I think they're all, they recognize that, that something major would have to go there. I don't know that it has to be any kind of a big record breaker. I think if you did something, you look at Dollywood, Big Bear Mountain, you did something from Vekoma, it had some pretty good length and everything to it. Something that, the height requirement that would allow it to, have a broader appeal. Something like that could work in that spot, and I think everybody would be happy with that. But if you're, you just can't put something, real small, scale in there. And I think everybody recognizes what was there, and that everybody, is going to compare it to the Vortex when that time comes, no matter what it is.
Yeah. So they might do what's like appropriate for Kings Island, and I'm saying like the Vekoma thing, because I think my worry is that they put in something like a Big Bear Mountain, and it's an excellent ride, but it's like, well, there used to be this great looping coaster here. Now they just got this family ride.
Yeah,
because I feel
the longer it goes, the more people are going to forget that there was a ride like Vortex there. So, eventually, everybody's just going to be excited to have a new ride and not really be comparing it to Vortex. I wouldn't even call it a Vortex replacement at this point, because a replacement would have happened, the next year or the next, within 2 years. That didn't happen. So now it's just a new ride. I don't think you compare it to Vortex anymore. You don't say it's replacing Vortex. It's just a new ride by the time that comes around.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a decade. So I think that we're to the point now where it's just
it's not a replacement, it's just a new ride.
Yeah, it's just a new ride. Sorry, I lost my mouse. My screens are all kind of jacked up, and they got messed up right before we went live.
We appreciate everybody taking their time to join us here tonight. This is always fun when we do the lives. We have a good time with it.
I love doing these lives. I've been looking forward to this all day. AO said, by the way, thank you for that super chat once again. But when they do put a coaster in the Vortex spot, do you think they could take out Stunt Coaster and extend it even further over? That would be epic.
That's not a bad idea, something like that. But I don't know. I mean, I don't even know that it would be necessarily a coaster that goes in there. I mean, you could put a couple of retail restaurants, things like that in there. I mean, you don't know. I mean, we'll have to see.
Yeah, I agree. Nameless Fool 13 said,
Mhm.
if a Big Bear Mountain style ride went in there, most everyone would forget about Vortex.
I agree. I think that's a fantastic ride. It's one of my favorites at Dollywood, and I think that would perfectly fit the Kings Island audience. You know who the guests are. I think that ride would fit. Something like that would be perfect for that spot.
I think it would too, but so a lot of people, especially, and I saw this a lot when they announced family thrill attraction for 2026. Everyone was like, oh great, a family thrill attraction, because a family thrill attraction at a park like Dollywood is something like Big Bear Mountain. A family thrill attraction at Kings Island is, how inexpensive can we do this? Because I really feel like that there's a couple of tropes that Kings Island falls into. When you go as cheap as possible and you don't have a budget for something, it's like, well, we're a family park. This is for families. And it's like, well, no, it's because you had $10 million less dollars in Cedar Point when they did theirs. I think that's one of the big tropes that they fall into.
The show that they really, know they need to focus on the families was the opportunity to really do something with Orion. I want it to be a giga, but it needs to be dialed down so families want to ride it. Everybody wants to ride it together, kind of a thing. And so you can't have both worlds there with something like that. And what you got was a coaster that's really good, but nothing that was worth the $30 million that they put in when you had something very similar with Diamondback.
Yeah, I mean, everyone compares it to Diamondback. It would have to be a totally different experience. It's not. I think that because you got that quote from Evan Poonstingle's book, Kings Island: A Ride Through Time. Highly recommend. Available on Amazon and at the park. But I think that was a little bit revisionist from Mike. I think Mike Kuntz was told that he was going to get this ride and it was going to be 286 feet tall and blah, blah, blah. And he was just like, oh, okay. And then from a revisionist standpoint, he was like, oh, it was a great idea because families could ride it together. But that's kind of like saying like, I want to get myself a monster truck, but like a small one that I can take the kids to school in. It's like, you either want a monster truck or you don't.
Yeah, I remember when it was in the planning stages and I got called into Mike's office and we had somebody, from maintenance and somebody would have been overseeing the construction of it. And he said, okay, this giga thing. So if we had a choice to make it 300 feet tall, but it's only going to drop about 280 something feet, or we can make it where it's 287 feet, but it's going to drop 300 feet. Which direction should we go? And I said, you should have it drop 300 feet because that's going to make it more of a thrill, a little bit. Nobody's going to really notice the 13 feet difference climbing the lift hill. Nobody does. I mean, when you're up that high, what's the difference really between 287 and 300? But dropping 300, I think especially like if you're in the front car, you're looking down, that's just going to look a little bit more imposing. So, I said it fits the criteria of a giga, if it's either 300 feet tall or 300 feet with the drop. And I said, you'll have that. But I said, I would make the drop better than the height of the lift.
I think that the problem is the coaster itself really did underwhelm. I think it was very similar to Diamondback, and if it wasn't, because I mean, remember the and then they rode it, and now it's everybody's favorite ride. I feel like it would have been the same situation with Orion, but I honestly think Orion just doesn't deliver. I think it's a good ride, but I think when we're talking about a giga coaster and it's one of 7 in the world, people would expect, a better experience than a slightly bigger.
Yeah, I think it was like 40 something, like 42nd or 43rd last year in the Golden Ticket Award rankings for steel coasters, and that's not something 5 years in that you paid $30 million for.
Yeah, and if it's getting beat out by stuff that's super old, then I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, Diamondback still scores high.
Nameless Thule. I'm going to master your name someday. Nameless Thule. There are more families than traveling thrill seekers. Catering to families makes money. I agree. I agree. But again, if if you say like we want to cater to families and you do things like Dollywood does, that's one thing. If you try to do things on a grand scale, but you're doing it, you're balling on a budget, and then you hide behind the whole like family thing, that's not the same thing. Using it as an excuse to put in, a $4 million attraction when you haven't had like, I mean, we've talked about it on the show, but there's a lot of not as good stuff with Kings Island. When we talked about you compared to the rest of the chain. So you got, starting in 2020, you got Orion. So Orion's a Giga Coaster. That's great. But everybody thought it was going to be Fury. And it's not Fury. And why isn't it Fury? Well, because they didn't want to put the money into it. But we're a family park. So we wanted a ride that a mother and her 5-year-old child could ride together. And as you can see, they get nothing out of that.
Right.
And then you can move on to Adventure Port. Everybody thought it would be like Aeronautical Landing. It's like fine, but it's not as grand or anything. It's like a 100-foot long section of the park. And there's 2 family attractions there. And that's great, but that's using it, hiding behind the family thing to cover the fact that you didn't have money to put into it.
Yeah, they could have just refurbished and continued to call it Oktoberfest through there.
Yeah.
Hey, here's one. Fish Dinner asks, what is your favorite character in Phantom Theater?
I like the Maestro.
Mine's Maestro or Usher, one of those two.
No Legs Larry. Is that officially his name or is it Usher?
I don't know. I mean, it was Usher in the original.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. Fish Dinner also said, what's your guys' thought on the development of Son of Beast and the Son of Beast plot / station?
What was that question again?
What are your thoughts on the development of the Son of Beast area and the station for Son of Beast that hasn't been used in a while?
There's nothing going on there. They're not trying to develop that land for anything. Everyone sometimes, they'll say from the Eiffel Tower they saw a bulldozer or something back. That's sure an area where they just dump a bunch of dirt and that. So I don't think anything's planned for that spot anytime soon. The station, it was used as a haunt maze for a little bit, but now it's used for storage. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know why they never took that out, to begin with, when they were tearing everything else down. But you would not use that same, you'd have to almost tear it down anyway, because the track and all that, you wouldn't use that same track that goes through there that's still left over. So I don't know what they would do with that, but I don't think anytime soon you're going to see that area being used. You're not going to see, a rebirth of Son of Beast or anything like that. Just not happening.
Okay. Logan Lipper said Orion did upstage Millennium Force, in my opinion.
There's a lot to like about, for me, Millennium Force. I really like, when you get up there at the top, you look out and you see the water and everything. I think that's kind of a cool visual. I prefer Millennium Force over Orion, but there's not enough, difference between the two in terms of what the experience is once you leave the first drop in that. So I don't know. I mean, it's everybody has their own different tastes and things that they like, but for me, it's Millennium Force.
I think the thing that kills me is that Orion, if you put it at almost any other park, would be the star of the show. But at Kings Island, it stands right next to Diamondback, and Diamondback is such a better experience, in my opinion, that the only thing that you're getting out of it is that it's taller.
Yeah.
I
feel I have a little more airtime on Millennium Force than I do on Orion.
Orion doesn't have much air. The one like Speed Hill it has the trims on it, so it kills it. They got the sideways airtime, which is kind of cool at the end.
I knew walking the track when they were building it, you know, you could tell like it's not going to have the airtime that Diamondback does.
Well, and Giga coasters aren't supposed to have airtime in that regard. It's supposed to show off the speed, so that's why they build them low to the ground. After the first hill. Millennium Force and Intimidator 3 or 5 or whatever they're calling it this week is another great example. But they like Orion, when the second hill is almost as tall as Diamondback, and it's just like just build another hyper coaster at that point.
Yeah, doesn't mean, I mean, it's fast, but it's not as fast as it would be if you kept it more closer to the ground throughout.
Or at least feel fast. Nameless Fool 13 said, "Did they ever have a Haunted Woods in the Dinosaurs Alive area? If not, that's definitely something they should have done."
Yes, they did. Trail of Terror.
No, he's talking about in Dinosaurs. He's talking about Dinos After Dark, I think.
Oh, that. Oh, yeah, they did that.
That was so cool. You got a T-shirt for doing it. They never had my size by the time I got up there, but you'd go through. They had a little bit of rope lighting the trail so you wouldn't wander off the trail, but everybody got a flashlight. And it was like, you talk about like creepy scenarios. You're going through there. They let small groups through at a time. And you just hear something in the woods. You turn your flashlight over. It's a freaking T-Rex or something. That was the coolest thing they ever did with Dinos Alive.
That was a cool attraction. It really was.
Mopar Preferred said, "There's still no option to buy a QR wristband linked to a pass and add-ons. Would be an easy cash grab." Yep.
Give it time.
Give it time. So what they need to do is they need to have it so like your pass is like NFC ready, like kind of how it is at Disney. And they could sell those things and you just tap them. But also you could use like an Apple Watch or something because those are so incredibly prevalent. And I think that what he's getting at is you wouldn't have to bring your phone into the park, or you could arm your kid with it. But that NFC technology is the way to go. And one thing that kind of blows my mind, by the way, Don, is that at Disney and Universal and all those places, you can, like, let's say I have a season pass and then I get another physical card. Like I lost my previous card. I can reactivate the old one. Like I can have as many cards as I want attached to my profile. It's just, you can only get in when it's yourself. They use the face scan and Disney uses the fingerprint. But for Kings Island, like they don't do physical passes anymore, but I don't have the option to add like an old gold pass as my link. Don, I don't want to drop news on you too hard, but we have a special guest joining us. I want to welcome Noah, the field reporter. What's up, Noah? Can you hear us?
Yep.
Awesome. Hey, so Noah, you so excuse Noah for being late. He was at football practice. So did you see the Phantom Theater announcement for next year for 2026?
Yes.
What did you think of it? Really?
Not too excited, huh?
I think it could be better.
I thought they could do better.
Probably better.
What do you think that they could have done better?
Maybe make it to where the theater's actually activated.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, they could do that. So no, you've been wanting to come on to tell us, and this is going to feel like old hat, but I want you to tell your story. You got to be in the Bubble Show twice. Can you tell us about those experiences?
That was pretty fun. I got to be put inside of a bubble. And also, another thing is, if you are already on my channel, you can follow me at Noah the Field Reporter. I also have that video on there too.
Yeah. So, for those of you who haven't yet, Noah the Field Reporter on YouTube. So give him a like. We've been, it's at Noah the Field Reporter. So we've been plugging him. He just got enough followers to get live, but he has some really good videos from like Stricker's Grove and places like that. But you put your bubble video on there.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Yeah. So interesting stuff from the mind of a 9-year-old. But let's get back to some of the questions, and Noah, we'll do this. So Laura Jo Ross said, if a Velocicoaster style ride went in the Vortex plot, what would you theme it to? That's a great question. Don, let's start with you.
What would we theme it to? Wow. You're in the Coney Mall area of the park.
Mm-hmm.
So but your name of the park is also Kings, right?
Right.
So I would make it, and I think it would make for a great logo. I would make it like, name it after like a lion, like a big lion would be your logo, and call it Monarch. So it would be the king of the Kings Island attractions.
The King of Kings Island. So Noah, if they were going to add a big
Monarch.
roller coaster in the Vortex plot, what would you name it?
Probably Coney Coasters or something like that.
Coney Coasters, or you could just name it Coney Barbecue, and they could advertise each other.
Yeah.
Orion being along kind of like the river back there. I thought a cool name for that would have been like River Rat.
Yeah. James Banks Jr. said, so the Conjuring experience is going in the old Tomb Raider building, huh? Yes, James, it is.
It is going in there. I think it'll be a good attraction. Unfortunately, you do have to pay to do it, but I do feel that will elevate the haunt experience by bringing in attractions like that. I think it needed something like that. It's competing with a lot of not so much amusement parks, obviously in the area, but it is competing with a lot of those standalone haunted attractions. We're talking like Land of Illusion and Dent Schoolhouse, some of the others. So you need something to kind of elevate the experience to make sure that you're keeping the teenagers and that coming there.
Yeah. So Noah, you obviously you're not going to have to pay for the mazes yourself because you're 9, but you've heard that they're going to have, you have to pay for the mazes, and they're going to have the Conjuring, which is based off of a movie, and the Dungeons, is it Dungeons Lair? I've never gotten that right. Anyway, so what do you think of the new haunted houses that they've announced? Do you think they look pretty good?
Yeah, maybe inside of the old tunnel for the Wax Museum line, they could have like dungeon torture devices in there.
Well, that one's going to be the Conjuring. The Dungeon's going to be the one that was in Blackout.
Yeah, they probably have the name.
Awesome. So Don, this is something that you brought up before, but Darth Rimbrod said need a red/big red machine coaster in Coney Mall.
Yes, I think that would work too if they could partner with the Reds and call it the Big Red Machine. This would have been the time to do it because it was the 50th anniversary this year of the Reds winning the World Series in '75. Next year would be the 50th anniversary when they did it again in '76. But no, I think that would be a nice tribute. It would tie into the city and everything really well. Everybody loves the Cincinnati Reds. It worked well when they had the Reds Hall of Fame grill. Everybody liked coming in and looking at all the memorabilia in that. So yeah, the Big Red Machine would be a perfect name for a coaster there. I mean, imagine how awesome that would look. You look at Steel Curtain like at Kennywood, same kind of thing. Where it's Big Red Machine, and I think that to partner with the Reds on that, I think that would be a home run.
A home run, a grand slam. Don, you've got some news to share with us.
I do. I have a question for the group. This just came out of Knott's Berry Farm today, and what they're going to do, let me find it here real quick, is the free cubbies, that were in the coaster stations to store your luggage. Those are out. And paid lockers are going to be in for 3 roller coasters at Knott's Berry Farm. And this is going to take effect in a couple of weeks. And I think you're going to see that rolled out at Kings Island. I don't think you're going to have the storage bins on Diamondback. I don't think you're going to see them on Diamondback. And I think that's going to come sooner than later. And that could come as soon as Halloween Haunt's starting. So how does everybody feel about that you're going to have to pay to store your stuff to ride those rides?
Do you feel like that kind of makes rides an upcharge? Like, well, I mean, on one hand, you can't have loose articles for, Banshee and Mystic Timbers and I think Orion. So you can kind of plan around that. But at like a Top Thrill 2, you couldn't have your cell phone in a zipper pocket and stuff.
No, you couldn't have anything like that. But, they want you to buy an upgrade to those drink bottles and that. But if you got one of those, you can't store it in the station when you ride. You're going to have to get a locker or leave it with a non-rider. And I think that's coming. There's a spot, I think, would be, where you could see some of these lockers going in. That's kind of between the Beast in the Diamondback entrance, which is where the Axe game, former soccer game, former hockey game was, right near the crypt building. So I think something, you may see some lockers going in there in the foreseeable future. I just think that's, the way they're going to go. Now, the positive for that, while it's negative as a guest that you're going to have to pay to store your luggage, is that it should increase capacity on the rides.
I think a big problem with capacity, though, is the people that don't fit. And it takes like a whole round of a couple people trying to get them in and stuff. And finally they give up and, they get out. And that's what holds up trains. I mean, I don't
It
think
does too. That does. Yeah, exactly.
That big of a deal.
No, but it's a lot longer to get on the rides, even when you don't have those situations, Ryan, than it used to be. You should be able to just get in, put your seatbelt on, pull down your lap bar, get the train out. But you can't, because people got to cross and get their luggage. You got to wait till the station clears. People are, grabbing all their stuff. Some people are slow moving in that. So I think it'll keep the ride platforms clear, and I think they'll be able to get out a few more trains per hour. If they can get out 2 or 3 more trains per hour, I mean, that's kind of a big deal. That's 100, 120 people, or so that they could, get in per hour. But I do think that's coming to Kings Island. So what's everybody's thoughts on that? Because if you're seeing it at Knott's, it's just a question of time before it gets rolled out elsewhere.
Yeah. Fish Dinner said, what night rides at Kings Island is an underrated night ride for Halloween Haunt?
Adventure Express.
Yeah, I agree. Noah, what do you think is an underrated night ride at Kings Island?
Soul Spin.
Soul Spin? Really?
Yeah.
That's a good choice.
It just move all the fog away from you. Is that how fast it's spinning?
Oh, that's true. Let's see here. Jeff Koth said, instead of asking me if I want to buy a souvenir cup, I think they should ask me if I want to upgrade the size of the cup.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, okay. So Tyson Weems said, wear cargo pants or cargo shorts. Completely agree. But that doesn't work for Siren's Curse and Top Thrill 2 and Velocicoaster, where they will go through a metal detector. So they become an upcharge ride for the ones that actually charge for the lockers. Daniel Tuttle said, paying for lockers more and more hurts the experience. I love the old-fashioned way of having large bins on the platform. Holiday World still gives this great experience.
Yep, they do.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, if you're planning a visit to Holiday World, I can offer you a discount. Just go to holidayworld.com/save and then use the promo code Don, and you'll save money on your tickets to Holiday World.
Yeah, it's a great deal. Okay. This will be the last one, and then we'll do some closing remarks. So Stone said, what's the longest wait you've seen at Kings Island? Mine was Orion opening day 2024, 2 hours.
The longest wait. For me, it was probably around 2 hours when the Beast opened in 1979. That was about the longest line that I've seen. It's probably about 90 minutes, closer to that. But, you hear the reports of a 3-hour wait time and all that when it first opened. They were only running one train. That's one of the reasons why it was a 3-hour wait. But for me, the longest I've ever waited in was somewhere between 90 minutes and 2 hours.
My dad actually waited.
Yeah, go ahead, Noah.
My dad actually waited all the way back by the Peanuts Grand Theater just to ride Diamondback on opening day for like 3 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that wrapped around the whole area. I mean, that circled the block there when that first opened. But I don't know that it was, as long as it looked, because the capacity was so good.
Well, and a lot of people probably were like, okay, we've waited an hour. I'm not doing this any longer. Noah, you waited a long time for Rapterra at King's Dominion this year, didn't you?
That was like 3.5 hours.
Yeah. So new ride, downtime, uptime. It was a season pass preview. And then, of course, the next day, they were able to walk on it in 25 minutes. For me, the longest was about 3 hours, and that was opening a Flight of Fear, because Flight of Fear is kind of low capacity anyway. And then on top of
Yeah.
that, they were only running one train. The line went all the way back to the Zephyr, went into what's now Area 72. It queued back and forth with bicycle gates in 72. Then you went through the press area. Then you went through the hangar, and then you got onto the ride. So it was probably 2.5, 3 hours then for that. But yeah, but thanks everyone for participating. We will have a video that drops tomorrow, talking about the new, Phantom Theater
New
opening.
Phantom Theater.
Opening scare.
I don't
Or,
know
sorry,
that
next.
anybody's more excited than I am about this ride. I even have my Phantom Theater shirt on.
I was trying to find mine. I couldn't find it super quickly, of the Phantom Theater shirts that they started selling for the 50th anniversary. But I tell you what though. Okay, somebody's asking, I'm not going to pull this up, but let's do this as one last thing. Opening day, Noah, how long do you think the wait for Phantom Theater is going to be?
Probably out the door, past Snoopy Soapbox.
Wow. Yep, I could see that. What do you think, Don?
I think it will be anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours once you get past 10:45 in the morning.
Yeah, I think it'll be about 2 hours personally. I think that there's going to be a lot of buzz for it, and then once people have done it, they've done it, and it will die down. But before we go, I'd put it in the chat one more time. Give Noah's channel a follow, Noah the Field Reporter. He's going to be working with us for opening weekend of Haunt to talk about the new Conjuring and the different mazes, and as well as what we are trying to decide if it's worth it or not. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, which I imagine everybody in here has subscribed, we appreciate that. And members, you're awesome. Thank you so much. We do have members content coming. A few technical difficulties, but I will have that to you. And yeah, everybody have a great weekend, and get that. I won't be in town this weekend, but Monday, 10:30 a.m. meet Don at the entrance to Boo Blasters to get one last ride on it. No, I believe you'll be there.
I will, and I've heard something about you have to collect enough music notes, and one thing is I hope that it will actually activate the theater.
Yeah, well, that's good. Right. We're all hoping for new equipment and so on, but 10:30 in front of Boo Blasters on
we'll ride, and then once everybody, we all know who's kind of with the group. Once we ride, we will get a group photo in front of Boo Blasters, and then enjoy the rest of the day at Kings Island. But I think that's kind of a cool thing to see how many Tower Topics members we can gather at the same time to get that final ride.
Yep. And just as a reminder, since we are doing this live, you still have the opportunity to get a Wicked Green Tower Topics t-shirt. Just email us at host@towertopics.com. We'll get that squared away with you. September 1st is going to be the last day we're doing those, and we're going to open our merchandise store, and sometime probably in October. It's going to have Tower Topics merchandise. It's going to have Noah the Field Reporter merchandise. It's going to be really, really cool. So we're building that now, but September 1st is the last day to get t-shirts the way that we did before. But thanks everybody. Have a great Labor Day weekend. We'll see you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.